Arran Fagan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are currently?
Yeah, I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades and like outdoor stuff. So I do a lot of running at kind of an average rate, and climbing at a average to below average rate. And then I was slash still kind of am like a semi-professional musician. And then I'm currently a high school zoology teacher up in Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah.
That's kind
What's
of everything.
what's a semi-professional musician?
Like I get paid to play shows when I play shows, but it's rarer and rarer due to just the busyness of life. You
Yeah,
know, I
not.
feel like I'm not full-time touring anymore.
It's a but you have toured full time.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
and then COVID shut that down real quick and
Oh
went back
yeah.
to grad school.
Yeah. What kind of music do you play for people who haven't heard your stuff?
I play folk music, usually about death, which is kind of I feel like Northwest classic. So, which we're going to talk a lot about of today. Actually, I was realizing as we went through the five, I was like, oh, they're all linked.
Yeah, I'm looking at your list and I'm like, yeah, no, that's yeah, okay. I see
Yeah,
that. Should we get into it?
let's do it.
Okay. Your first one on this list for the show called My Favorite Things. So these five favorite things you've had throughout your life. Number one is NPR's recording of the Tallest Man on Earth set at the 2012 Newport Folk Festival. What
Yes.
where are you, how old are you when this happens, and where are you when you hear this for the first time?
Uh, I am 20. No, I am. Let's see, 2016, right? No, 2012. I'm like 15 at the
Okay.
time. I just turned 30 last year. I'm about to turn 31. Yeah, 15-ish. And I'm like a sophomore or junior in high school, and I probably was watching YouTube and kind of found like Ryan, I think Mastro is his last name, but he did all these like YouTube videos for Newport Folk Festival and just did a ton of recording. And then NPR did like a field office kind of thing where they did a bunch of videos for Newport in the 2012s to 2014s. And so I watched like and listened to every recording, and they did listen to all the interviews because they did like basically every year they do like a month of just Newport Folk Festival, without basically turning it into like a full-length documentary. So yeah, I think that's how I found it. Obviously, I was a fan of Tallest Man stuff before then, but yeah.
What are you sad like at this point when you're getting this music, when you're like first hearing it and going like, "Oh, this is about me." Or what's
No.
why does it
Yeah, good.
resonate, I guess?
Yeah, I think Toss Man and Earth's music really resonates because like it was taking what I really loved about hearing music that my parents raised me on, kind of almost in a way mixed with like the indification of things, where it felt like less mainstream and it also felt really personal, and it also like he's an incredible performer, an incredible musician, but he's also just like a dude kind of doing his thing. And so it felt very like personal in the way that I was like, I can do this. Like it's just one guy doing this thing and he's finger picking and he's writing sad songs. And like there was definitely like a mystique to it, where I'm like, I want to be like him. It's like he's got cool boots, so I bought the cool boots, and stuff like that. He's like, he's wearing skinny jeans. I can wear skinny jeans. And yeah, he just like I think there was a big renaissance of like folk music in the early 2000s or mid 2000s to like 2018-ish. I feel like Mumford and Sons really kicked that off, and the Oh Brother Where Art Thou,
Mhm.
bluegrass kind of sphere. And so I was kind of caught up in that full, and Tallest Man was really the bridge between like what I grew up listening to with my parents, and then weirdly, like I felt like I came from like the Nine Inch Nails, Rage Against the Machine, like middle school phase and Tool to like somehow coming back into Tallest Man, I think was his songwriting, and like the intricate guitar was just kind of a good blend.
Yeah. So are you? That's interesting. Rage Against the Machine in middle school. It's like I'm like, you
Hmm.
were angry enough already, huh? Like, yeah, that's great.
Kind of, like it was definitely I didn't really know what I was. It's middle school's like the time where you're figuring out who you are for the
Mm-hmm.
first time, like you really have a personality that like is uniquely yours, and so it's like
Mm-hmm.
going to Hot Topic and picking out like a purple studded belt, but being like a total square was kind of a fun thing. And so, I think Rage Against the Machine, to get into that for a second, was like my first kind of taste of I don't know, like, yeah, anger would be the right word, but also like politicization. I
Mm-hmm.
think like I watched, I think Bowling for Columbine around that same
Oh
time,
yeah. Yeah.
and all the Michael Moore documentaries, and so like I was like, I'm an anarchist. It's like, no, you're like a middle schooler, and not doing anything very anarchy or punk rock in any way, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Toss Me on Earth in a weird way felt very similar, but more emotional, and I think that was really a fun thing. Yeah,
That's interesting. I would not have drawn a line between those two musical acts in
but
any
like,
way, except there's both guitars and singing, really.
yeah, but like if you listen to that Newport show, he is like
Yeah.
giving his all. He's
Yeah.
not just singing; he's like screaming and like giving
Yeah.
everything, and I just feel like there is kind of a similar like soul punch of some kind that is just in that recording. Like every song freaking rocks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2012, you're 15. Are you already playing the guitar then?
Yeah, I started in like seventh or eighth grade and then didn't really pick it back up until high school. So like I'd started around that time and definitely could not play a single Tallest Man on Earth song. Actually, sorry, we're thinking 2012. Sorry.
Hmm.
I'm a sophomore or junior in high school. So yeah, I'm playing the guitar at that time.
Okay.
And definitely trying to learn how to finger pick, trying to learn how to Travis pick. And it was so hard because he's just like a freaking master. And, you know, at 15, you're like, I can do anything. And I could not do anything. Like playing Hey Ya by Outkast was like really hard on the guitar at the time, which is like two
What's
chords.
when's the first? Yeah, or yeah, when is the first time you were successfully able to play a Tallest Man on Earth song, and do you remember what it was?
Uh, I would have to look up the song name because I can remember the guitar chords, but it's like I walk along the river like it's easier than sand, whatever that song is. Is it Love Is All?
Yeah, I think that is Love Is All,
Yeah,
actually.
Love Is All. That one I learned how to play because it was really a simple kind of E minor coming up to a G. I actually use a lot of his finger picking stylings still to this day in a lot of things I write. I never kind of
Mm.
left that. Actually, I don't use a pick. I don't do a lot of strumming stuff. It's mostly finger picking, and I feel like his influence is really the main kind of driver of that. But Love Is
Yeah.
All is definitely the song. He had like a Jules Holland video doing Love Is All, and it was like, oh my gosh, this tone is crazy. Like he's just thrown himself all over the stage for like a tiny little, sad, quiet song. And so he does that too in, I think he doesn't start the Newport Folk Festival session with it. I should have it in memory at this point because I've heard it so many times, but he does that in the
Hmm.
show too. It's crazy. So,
Okay.
yeah.
As a person who cannot play the guitar and thinks of people playing the guitar as being just amazing, and then people finger picking the guitar even more amazing, and then finger picking the guitar and singing at the same time, like how hard is that for you?
Now for me, I don't have to think about it at all. I can play anything and sing over it and like not an issue. But at first, like just trying to strum a chord or even finger pick anything, like just moving your three fingers, let alone all five or four or two, was so difficult. It would be trying to think and do something with your hands. It's kind of like the rubbing your stomach and patting your head at the same time kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's so difficult, and then your brain just kind of, or at least for me, it just kind of turned on, and it just suddenly became so much easier. But it took me probably 6 months to be able to go into the Travis style picking. Like I'm not a virtuoso in any way. It's always been just like thousands of hours of doing anything. That's kind of been all of the things I do is just me being really stoked about it and kind of having a hyperfixation for a long period of time to get
Nice.
average.
Well, wait, what's motivating you when you're that young and you're like, I'm definitely gonna learn to play the guitar? Is it like because girls or like
No, just
not
wanting
at
to
all?
create things. Yeah, just
Okay.
wanting to create stuff. Like it was just like someone created this out of thin air and it's like magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool. And I luckily had really supportive parents, and so they would just be like, "Yeah, go sit in your room for like 6 hours and play the guitar, and it's fine if the volume's on loud, or they'd put me outside. Maybe go sit outside. I played my first show too around 2012, if I remember correctly. And so like my
Oh
dad
wow.
drove me there, and I played at like some like brewery gig or whatever outside and did a bunch of covers and stuff like that, and kind of was like, oh, this is cool. And I think for me, like music has always been the same. It's helped me figure out kind of the thoughts in my brain. And so like that's where creating is really, really nice is it's
Mm.
not therapy, but it definitely lets me kind of take all the things I'm thinking about and flesh them out and kind of discover what I'm actually thinking about or what it actually means.
Yeah. That's the thing try to say in my writing courses too. Like writing is
Yeah.
not therapy, but it is therapeutic. Can be therapeutic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I don't know if this is the same way for your style of writing, but like I'll write something and then 6 months later it'd be like, oh, that's what this was, or that's what this means, or oh, I didn't even realize putting two to two together. Because sometimes, like the way that I write, I don't write with like a pen and paper. Usually, I'm usually like writing with a guitar, playing chords, and just spitting things out. I do the Jeff Tweedy style of
Mhm.
songwriting, which is like his big thing, and so I'm not really actively thinking about it. Like I go back and I edit and stuff like that, but a lot of the time it's months later I realize what it was actually about because I've like tapped into whatever's in my brain, that wants to be out.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I think maybe songwriting is a little more abstract for some people than the
Yes.
type of writing I do. That's really interesting to think about.
Yeah,
Um,
and there's so many different ways to do it too,
yeah,
and so that's the thing is it works for me, and maybe that means I'm just a lazy songwriter, but like it's worked for me so far. I feel like I write my best songs when I am less critical and just kind of able to let it come out.
that's cool. You know what, dude? Good enough for Jeff Tweedy. Good enough for you. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number two is the movie Her, which
Yeah.
I should look. I don't even remember what year this came out. But it
Oof.
feels
I thought it was
like
2012.
weirdly predicting the future
Everything.
we are living right now. Um,
Yes.
did you see it in the theater?
I don't think I was allowed to. I don't think I was old enough to see it in
Okay.
the theater. I don't think I was 17 or 18 yet. But like, I could have been. I remember watching it for sure on like DVD. And it's funny because like it was the first movie that my, I guess soon to be wife, because we just got engaged, saw together on a date like back in college. But like I saw this in high school with like a different girlfriend too. So like, I don't know why, but this movie like really just took a hold of my brain in a way that nothing had at the time, and it's definitely like kind of a dude movie. I've been told
Hmm.
by like lots of people is it's about kind of a creepy dude who, like, at the time I was like, oh, this guy's just misunderstood and he's emotional and like he doesn't really know what he's doing and he's kind of bumbling through life searching for meaning. It's kind of like the Into the Wild s guy who doesn't get to go on an adventure though to kind of find himself.
Yeah.
But it really, I think, was just a fascinating take on like it's okay to love things even if they're not going to love you back in the same way, or even if they're not real. Like there is emotional depth to things that are, you know, not human. And unfortunately, a lot of that has come true. And now I feel very opposite about it, where I'm like, I don't know if you should have an AI girlfriend, when I've got students who have those and whatnot. It's just, yeah, it's like I was talking to Emily, my girlfriend, about this, and she was like, it's really sad how like his job was to write thank you cards and like I love you cards for people. Um, And now AI does that for people. And I listened to a whole podcast about it recently about how people are using it more and more to write heartfelt emotions to their loved ones. Like, hey, AI, write me a
Mm.
card to my wife of like 20 years of marriage or something like that. And like, is that ethical? And so I think that movie really dives into that only because society has moved into this like weird AI sphere.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, to an extent, greeting cards always have been. You know, it's like where you're like flipping through all of them. And I'm like, this does not sound like something I would say to my dad for Father's Day. So maybe I'll just get a Snoopy card and write my own thing in it or whatever. But
But
yeah,
there's
it's
something about
interesting.
that, you know? You get
Yeah,
both.
yeah, that's interesting. So you're telling me you're not having AI write your wedding vows then? Is
Hell
it
no. No,
okay?
I'm very anti AI for the most part, except for like from a science lens, like it is being good for some science
Yeah,
stuff, you know,
yeah.
but I'm not I think it really kills creativity, and in the classroom I'm really watching my students be less curious and work less hard, and not to be like a generational thing, because I think kids are kids, but I do think that like AI is making, how do I say this appropriately? I think it makes my incompetent coworkers less competent. Does
Wow.
that make any sense? It's
that's,
like, I,
that's
yeah, and like we all have incompetent coworkers, and like there's people who think that I'm incompetent probably at work. So I'm not trying to like judge anybody, but I have noticed that like I feel like AI makes people more mediocre than we already all are in
wow.
some ways.
By letting us get away with the places the things we're already mediocre at and aiding that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Huh. Yeah.
Do you agree?
Um,
Disagree?
I'm trying not to have an opinion about all of it, except for
That's fair.
I'm a crusty old guy who's trying not to use it ever. And like,
That's fair.
I mean, I'm just not trying to have a real public opinion about it, but yeah, no,
You know,
I just,
I'm a nobody, so I can have a hot take, I guess.
yeah, right, right, yeah. Um, so the movie at the time, you said it made the case that you could love something that doesn't love you back or isn't even real. What is going on with you? And it was 2013. What
Yeah. Okay.
was there a parallel there where you were like, nah, I have this cat who doesn't care if I live or die, but hangs out anyway, or like, what is it? What's going on with you where you're thinking that?
No, you know, I really think that it was just one of those like, I think like as I was kind of growing into like my own, I really started to realize that there is a lot more depth and nuance to things than I give myself
Hmm.
and give my brain the allowance for. So like, you know, I just gave like a hot take about AI. Realistically, someone's going to be like, "Well, actually there's all these other ways that you can use it in a great human way." And so I'm definitely a black and white person, and that can get me in trouble sometimes. And it can also, I think, limit myself from maybe depth that and maybe depth that I'm missing. And so I think art specifically allows that gray zone that my brain struggles with to kind of access it more. And I really felt like that movie really pulled at my heartstrings in an emotional way, and then it also allowed my like analytical intellectual brain to kind of think about things in a way that I would have probably dismissed, you
Hmm.
know, normally. And I also just think like aesthetically it's a beautiful movie. Like
Yeah.
I love the collared shirt no collared shirt thing, like where it's like a collared button up shirt that the collars have been cut off, and like the colors are beautiful. It's weird and dystopian. It was probably one of the first like indie-ish films that I had seen, you know,
Hmm.
at that time that wasn't like a music documentary.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was really beautiful, you know, in a way.
Yeah, it was. I can't believe that it was actually 13 years ago now. I'm like, man, that was 5 years ago, right? But no,
Yeah.
oddly predicting what's going on right now. So
Hmm. Yeah. And like honestly, like if in a way, I feel like it kind of got things more right than like right now. Like maybe we're going too far in an extreme, and we're going to balance back out with
hmm.
AI. But I feel like we haven't really figured out what people are going to use AI really for because it's so new.
Hmm.
Uh, like, like if it gives people meaning and like they find emotional love and security, that's great. But like, I don't know, because I think that's the thing is the AI in her really was critical in the way that they thought, very emotionally mature. Whereas, you can say really anything to AI now and it'll just affirm your beliefs in that. And that's probably not healthy for anybody. You know what I mean? Like, he would get in arguments with Scarlett Johansson's character and stuff like
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Interesting. Now I feel like I got to rewatch it, but I
Yeah.
remember it. I remember it leaving me with I was just like, oh man, I don't know. That was tough. Little bit of a downer for me.
Yeah.
But
That's fair.
yeah. Number 3 on your list is a Typhoon album, White Lighter.
Yes.
Um, where is Aaron in life when he discovers this album or a song off this album?
I'm probably still in high school using Pandora to find like all my music, that or YouTube, basically. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and Instagram wasn't what it was like 13 years ago. And so I feel like it really was YouTube and Pandora that I found most of my music or like SoundCloud. And I probably was the song Young Fathers, which is off that album. It's the second song on the track. Um, and then I moved to Portland being like, I'm gonna come to Portland, I'm gonna play a lot of music, I'm gonna like do all this cool stuff. And like first month that I'm in Portland, I am working for the college radio station at University of Portland, KDUP. And I reach out to Typhoon on Bandcamp being like, hey, could I interview you guys? Because they were like, yeah, you can interview whoever you want, as a college radio station person. And they responded and were like, hey, we're doing a show at Pendarvis Farm. You should just come. And so I like got to meet Kyle and like the whole band and like got to see the show. And like White Lighter ended up being kind of like this album for me that was kind of my like epic because it's about like what makes a good life when you have circumstances that are for sure going to shorten your life. In the case of the album White Lighter, it's about Kyle getting Lyme disease, which is challenging in a huge way. And so it's really existential and it's really about like, how do you make a good life? And you can't change your decisions after things have already happened in your life. You can't take anything back. Like you can only move forward. And so I felt like that album was really beautiful. And then it just kept coming back. Like I would hear the album a ton. I got to see the show, and then I ended up being an intern for Tender Loving Empire, who was their label at the time, too, in college. And so I would like bike downtown Portland and like be stacking all of the White Lighter records and stuff like that in the headquarters. And I just like I think about that album so often because there are so many. I think it's very obvious that well, actually, I shouldn't say this. I can't read into it too much, but like it was very obvious to me that Kyle was still figuring out who he was and what was happening in his life and how to address it and how to handle it. And I would have to ask him obviously if that was right or not. But that's what that album felt like was a searching for meaning in a really beautiful way too, because it's so opposite of Toss Man and Earth. It's like it's 11 or 13 members or something like that. So many instruments. It's like indie rock to its core. There's choir arrangements. It's just a beautiful album.
Yeah. Um, through all that story, how are you developing or what's going on in your musical career as your college radio DJ to intern to like you're still playing? Are you trying to play shows at that point or what's
Yeah. Every spring break, I would like do a little tour. I was playing shows like at least a few times a month, trying to drive up to different towns and tour. This was where I started to realize that like touring was possible. And so I was like playing so many shows in Portland and trying to meet as many people as possible. Not like in the hustle culture, just like there's so many musicians. This is so cool, and so I would play everything and anything, from pizza shops to I don't know, backyard wine events to like actual shows. And I was definitely trying to mimic some of Kyle's songwriting in that, but I'm also like one dude. But I started playing with like an upright bass player and a cello player at that time. Sorry, not cello, a viola player at the time. I now play with a cello player. And so we were trying to do more intricate stuff, but I kind of I made the mistake of like being a young kid who was really obsessed with the magic of music and needed to probably learn the music theory, at the time. And so I didn't really have the technical chops, but I surrounded myself with good musicians, which was really helpful.
Oh, oh, okay. That's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
So you go back and do it over. When you say you should have learned music theory, are you like needing college courses in this or what?
I think like I had a really great song like guitar teacher growing up, Saul Kruger out of Medford, Oregon, and he taught me how to songwrite, which was really incredible and I think worthwhile. But like, he would be like, "Oh, let's practice, notation and like let's think about major and minor chords and let's think about like all of this stuff." And I'd be like, "Nah, I just want to like it's magic. Like if I learn too much about the technical side of music, it ruins music for me." And like I do think there is something about that sometimes, but then you hear like a really good musician who also knows how to play like a G chord 17 different ways. You're like, "Oh, yeah, they're able to like truly access music in an even more magical way." So I
Hmm.
would have probably gone back and tried to do that.
When you say that musician, like, do you have somebody in mind when you say that somebody who knows how to play a G chord? Like, is Andrew Bird somebody one of those people or?
Andrew Bird is, but I feel like there are some people that are so good at things that you're just like, it's not reachable, it's not possible, for
Hmm.
me. I feel like there's a band right now that's touring through that I just saw for like the second time, and the band Flight, Flyte. They're like a folk band from England, and they surround themselves with incredible musicians, but they also are incredible players. And
Hmm.
so it's subtle folk music, but there is a lot more depth to the things that they do
Hmm.
because
Okay.
they, like, I feel like Gregory and Isakov does a good job of that too. Laura
Oh.
Marling, she's an incredible guitar player, but she makes it look so easy and it's very
Hmm.
subtle. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. I think of Gregory Alan Isakov, and I think like he just never lets his voice get very high. Maybe that's what I like. It seems chill. I don't know. That's as far as
Yeah.
I've gotten into it, but like I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan.
Well, like I know
Um,
you're a big Jose Gonzalez fan, right? And
yeah.
like he plays guitar in a way that allows for other instrumentation to be added in a unique way. It's
Hmm.
not just about the guitar lyrics and the song, it's about the instrumentation and like the production, which I think a lot of songwriters who don't learn that type of like theory, it's harder to do, including for myself. Like that's been a practice as I've gotten older.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Jose Gonzalez, also apparently a great, wonderful human being, nice
I've
guy,
heard that.
as
Yeah,
far as
that's
I know.
awesome.
On our death theme, should we move on to Some by
Sure.
David Eagleman? Can you
Yeah.
just can you just describe what the book is? I have read it, but I'd love to hear
Yeah.
you talk about what it is.
So the book "Some" by David Eagleman is 40 tales of the afterlife, told from, I guess, fictional perspectives. Like there's no real religious theme to it. There's no scientific theme, but it's just kind of like what is the afterlife if we get one. And it's each story is only about a page to 2 pages long, which I really love about that. And they really just are all written in such a brilliant way that they make you think incredibly deeply about things. And so, like, my favorite two that I think about most often is "Sum" is the first one, SUM is the sum of all the things that you do in your life, but you replay them in the order of the sum of time that you did them. And so, like I've got a cup of coffee, it's like you drink for as long as you drank, the sum of that in your life. You use the bathroom for as long as you use the bathroom in your life. You walk as long as you walked, but all at once. And I think there's something kind of fascinating about that because it really makes you think about the time that you use and the time you waste. Especially with like doom scrolling and being on my
Oh,
phone, I think about this all the time. Or I talk to my students and I'm just like, you have one life, and you should use it for whatever you want, but don't be a slave to the phone, you know, or something that you don't want to do. Obviously, we all have to work, we all have jobs, we all have responsibilities, but I think there's something inherently good about those things. I don't necessarily think there's something inherently good about like doom scrolling on my phone for, I don't know, 22 days of my life or something like that I don't get back.
Oh, if that would be that'd be a very short amount, I think. Or that'd be like a very you're like a not a big phone user if that's all you're doing. But
yeah, I think I did the math once for like how long people or I read this once about how long people spend in traffic or something in their lives, and it's multiple years if you live in like LA or something like that. And I'm just
yeah,
trying to think like at least that you're like experiencing the world. You know what I mean? Like in your car, even though you get to see things, you get to experience things, you have to think critically. But like the doom scroll, I just feel like I would rather waste years of my life in my car than looking at an Instagram ad, basically.
well, yeah. Would you rather stare at a wall for that
Yeah,
time?
I
Yeah,
think
me too.
so.
Okay, yeah, me too. I know,
Yeah.
but like, can I have something to write with if I am doing that, but or draw
Yeah.
with? But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
Go ahead.
yeah. No, what was your second one
I was going
from
to say my
some?
second story in that book is also one of the well, there's two, but the one of them is you redo your life basically in the afterlife, but you only see the people that you ever came in contact with. And so there's no strangers. There's nobody walking down the street that you don't know. And I thought that that was a really beautiful thing too, because like there's something incredibly profound about being surrounded by people at all times, or when you want to be surrounded by people, or when you don't want to be. And so like if you go to the grocery store and you know the clerk, or less and less if you use the self checkout, you know, if all of those people that you don't know disappear, there's maybe like four people in the grocery store that you ever see, you know, or recognize, depending on where you live too. Like I live in St. John's in Portland, which is like a little neighborhood. And so like I see a lot of the people in my neighborhood over and over and over throughout the week. However, even then, it's probably condensed down into like 20 people, you know? And so there are thousands of people around me and thousands of lives that I don't know that could have the access to if I wanted to reach out. But also just being surrounded by strangers can be very comforting sometimes, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a cartoonist I follow, Avi Steinberg. He does some stuff for the New Yorker a lot of times, but he has this one. He's never turned it into a real cartoon. It was just a sketch he put up, but it was like this person sitting at a table with a cup of coffee, and they're just surrounded by like it's like a big some public space, like maybe
Hmm.
like a food court in a airport or something like that, or a really busy coffee shop, and it's just like finally some alone time. He also lives in New York, so but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like yes, no, I think there's something to that for sure. Like, why do we go to a coffee shop and not talk to anybody to
Yeah.
work? And like somehow we need that.
Well,
Um,
or like, we both run long distances. Like, there is something sometimes really nice about like you get your solitude on the trail and then you see one person hiking and like you can let your guard down for a moment of like, it's kind of lovely to see a human, even if you don't know them at all, just to
yeah,
like smile or wave or not even look at them, just know that there's someone near you.
yeah,
And obviously that there's some privilege in that of like, what if that person's, going to do something to you? But at the same time, like, I, I'd like to believe that like there is something comforting about being surrounded by strangers, you know?
hmm yeah,
Yeah.
in a safe space, yeah, for
In
sure,
a safe
and
place for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. And then the third one is, uh, it's the thing of everyone wants to be turned, what animal would you be if you could be an animal kind of thing. And it was fascinating with somebody in the book is basically like, oh, I want to be a horse. And so their body starts to morph into the horse and like their brain starts to realize, oh no, I'm actually going to be a horse. And so your brain starts to shrink and basically they lose the ability you can't be a horse and have the human intellect or the human brain. And so your memories are gone. You basically just turn into a horse and that's your new experience and your new kind of
reality,
yeah. And so it's not like you're a horse and having your life as a human brain. It's like no, you just lost this beautiful kind of like it's incredibly, I think, special to be a person. you know. And obviously it's incredibly special to be a horse too, but like there is something truly incredible at the fact that we're here right now. You know.
Yeah, I mean, especially we believe this is the highest life form. You know, from an anthropocentric lens, we think we're the best. And
Yeah.
like, yeah,
I'm not
It's
convinced of that personally, but like you know, because there's just like the more we learn about animals, like or even plants, like just it's spectacular. But yes, yeah, there is something special though I think about the range of emotions and complexity that we get to experience.
I also escaping the food chain is like pretty dope. I would say, you know, like if people are like, I want to my next like I want to come back as a blank. I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, domesticated golden retriever. Yeah, sure. You'd probably be bored a
Yeah,
lot, but yeah, I want to be a dolphin. Like, cool, but
yeah,
FYI, you know, yeah, like literally
yeah. You
everything.
want to be an adult?
There's murder everywhere in nature, except for
Yes,
except for if we're privileged enough to not be murdered. But
100%.
yeah, anyway,
Yeah, you want to be a
isn't
bug? Like really? Like those? You realize that anyone driving by, like you're done.
yeah, or like your lifespan is just very short. So,
Yeah.
um, okay, so isn't David Eagleman? Is he like a neuroscientist?
He
Is
is,
that
yeah. And I found him
yeah?
through. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and so I found him through the Radio Lab podcast because he was like a
Okay,
pretty
okay,
frequent contributor. But
okay,
yes, he is a neuroscientist, and I think that's like
okay.
what I really liked about his book too. Though, is it's. I feel like we think about the afterlife. Usually, I feel like religion or science. Those are the two things that pop up, and he was like, no, we're just going to do it from a completely fictional perspective. And he could have done it from a scientific perspective, but he chose not to, and I thought that was actually kind of beautiful, and the right choice for that book because it's just a lovely book.
Yeah, I think he's probably also like, I want to sell some books, and the religion one is taken, science
Yeah,
one kind of taken too. So let's just have fun and
totally.
see where it goes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating book. Are you
Yeah.
reading? You're reading that book? You reading like three at a time, or are you like kind of taking it slow and reading one at a time and processing and
When I first got it, I could only handle about three at a time.
yeah.
And then when Emily and I started dating, I brought it back and we would read one a night together and then talk about it.
Hmm.
And that was really fun. I actually like it was a blast because it would be like, well, what do you think about this perspective on this? And and everyone has different perspectives, and and so that's been really lovely. However, it's also such a brutal book in a way because like you are thinking about dying in such like a direct way that like it is kind of a hard like I'm gonna read this book and then talk about it for 30 minutes and then go to sleep. Yeah. I'm curious like if since I don't have a family, but like if you do, when your kid gets old enough, maybe reading that book with him or reading him with your wife. I'm curious like how the
Wow.
different perspectives would balance.
I haven't even thought about that. I'm kind of like I'm
Sorry to
excited
bring
to no, I'm excited to watch Star Wars with him, but that's still years off, and like
totally.
some is probably after Star Wars.
Yeah, I would say maybe high
Yeah,
school,
yeah,
junior, senior year. Yeah,
yeah. I know it's interesting. No, I'm more like just day by day at this point with a few months of foresight, but yeah,
that's
it's
fair.
something to think about for sure. I have it on the shelf, so we're good. Um, so for your fifth item, fifth favorite thing, you said this may have to be a game time decision.
Yeah.
Do you want to pick one of these two books?
I think we'll do like although I love The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion and I've read it several times, I think I am gonna go East of Eden by John Steinbeck.
Okay.
Uh I think they're both actually similar in a way, if that makes any sense, as they're about decisions. And so I think Emily's rereading East of Eden right now, and I've read it several times. And I was so in the summers between college, I found a job basically teaching on military bases or for the military. And so they would like fly me and a bunch of college students out to different places around the world to like teach kids or basically run day. It was more even running daycares at times.
Oh.
Um, and so like I lived on a military base in Japan for a summer for about 3 months in Yokosuka, Japan. And I I was always a reader, but I had definitely fallen off in high school and part of college. And so this was after my first year of college. I moved to Japan for the 3 months, and I borrowed East of Eden from the library on base, and it just blew my mind. And being kind of like a stupid like 18 or 19-year-old at the time, I remember asking the librarian, I was like, hey, is like I'm not gonna be able to finish this before like I fly home or before I like travel a little bit. Like, is there anybody I could buy it from the library? And she was like, no, of course not. And I also didn't know that everything on military bases has to be provided by the US. So like if I took that book, it would have to be shipped from the US to Japan to be on the military base.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, so there was no way I was ever going to take that book, but I never got to finish it. And so I read it, I just kept thinking about it over and over and over. And then I did some traveling after I worked before I came back, and I ended up finally getting a copy of it, and it just like absolutely blew my mind. And it really is, I think, the reason why I kind of fell back in love with reading, to be honest, as a book. I just felt like the depth was there, the writing, like that first page where he says something about like, those who have the least have in a way the most to brag about when they talk about their hometowns. Like if their hometown is the worst, they brag about it the most, is they're so they've got it all. And like I think about that with, I grew up in Medford, Oregon, and the Rogue Valley is an incredibly beautiful place, but it's not a place that I would say most people who got out of Medford would say they would go back to live. Even though I've definitely come to love it in my older years, but I would say that at that time I was like, oh, I'm never going back there, and so that book really struck me in that way of like being stuck in a place and making do, but also being very deeply proud of a place that you feel very conflicted about.
Yeah. Interesting. When you picked up the other copy, were you like, I was on page 138 and just
No,
start there?
I restarted. Yeah, I have to restart things. And so I restarted it. I like borrowed it from a friend, read it, wrote a song about it too. I wrote a song called Westward from Eden about it. And like just have always thought about this book. And then when Emily and I started dating about 10 years ago, I bought a copy, and to like kind of make her think that I was like interesting or intellectual, I like wrote notes in the book and like highlighted things and underlined things. But she's pretty, she's much smarter than I am, and she caught on, but she was like, you really only like wrote notes on the first like 3 pages, right, of the whole book. And so I was like, that's a good point. Yeah, I was not as clever as I thought I was.
I've bought that's hilarious. I've bought books in used bookstores where somebody starts out hot, and they like after page 70, there's no more notes. And I'm like, yeah, didn't finish it. Not only that, then they sold the book or gave it away. So it's like, this wasn't the
And what's the story there, right? Like after page 70, like what happened?
I mean, anything could have happened, really. Yeah, I guess I'm assuming they gave the book away, but they also could have just like gotten run over by a bus,
Yeah,
and
left it in a coffee shop.
Who's to say? Left it in a coffee shop? Any of those things?
Divorced.
What is so how is it? How is that book informed, or how is that book played into your relationship with Emily then? Did she like it? She's obviously rereading it.
Loves it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, so Netflix is doing a retelling of it in the fall. And so it's with Florence Pugh, I believe, and I cannot remember the director's name, but she was in The Big Sick, which is like Kumail Nanjiani.
Yeah.
She played the actor in that movie, which is about his life. His like love interest who ends up becoming his wife. She is the one who directed. I just cannot remember her name.
Yeah.
And so Emily was like, you know what, I want to reread this. And so I've read it several times, and I don't reread a lot of books. It's that and Year of Magical Thinking are the 2 I've reread. And she's reading it, so we've been talking about it a ton. And I think that book, like Emily's a writer, that's her. She's finishing a book right now, and so like she is just like, this book freaking rocks, and it's just so well done. But it's about choice, and like you don't always get to make choices in your life, and it's a retelling of basically a lot of the Bible as well, that book. And so I think what's fascinating about it to me is kind of thinking about like some of those characters, they get choices in their lives that they could make to change their lives in a better way, but then they die before they even get to make those decisions. And like some of them get to live, but then never make those right decisions, and then others do. And so it's really about like how we all get so many choices in our lives and can take us so many different directions, but you don't always know how it's going to affect you, or if you're given the freedom to, would you make the right decisions for your life? Is there a right decision as well? So I don't know. We talk about that a lot. We've been talking about that. She's also like, I used to think that Kathy was such a deep character, and she's like, I don't think Steinbeck understands Kathy at all, because she's like, she's so intellectual in her brain as a character, and yet every time she speaks, Emily said this yesterday, she comes off as like a cartoon villain, and it's like, dang it.
Somebody in my writing workshop just last week, I just overheard part of a conversation. They were like, that book, I tried reading it again, but it's, I just think Steinbeck hates women. I was like, okay, I actually have not read East of Eden. I read Grapes of Wrath and Travels with Charlie and some of his other stuff, but yeah, which is probably the a much more intense take on what you just said. Like he doesn't understand the character.
Which is crazy though. It's like he writes about the immigrant experience. Obviously, like I'm a white dude, so I don't know the immigrant experience, but like he writes about the immigrant experience in a way that's like, I feel like actually quite of its time, pretty spectacular for like, empathetic and spectacular and very complex for like a white man at that time, and even now, to be honest. Like the fact like this character Lee does all the work and takes care of this family, and yet Lee is faking his accent to be able to fit into this society, and only around certain people can he drop the accent and be a real human. And when he doesn't speak with the accent, people don't hear him or even like acknowledge him. And like he talks about kind of like the weight of like trying to prop up society and doing all the work, which is like the immigrant story of like a lot of people being raised on, the foundation of immigrants. And so it is kind of fascinating. I don't disagree with your writing workshop person's hot take either. But it is fascinating. I think it really shows from a Steinbeck perspective. I don't know really a lot about him, but I really do think it shows that some writers really are complex humans, and like we all have weaknesses and blind spots. I think about that a lot with Cormac McCarthy and Larry McMurtry. I've just read some Dove series, and I think about like, dang, Lonesome Dove's like a feminist like hero movie in a way.
The first one.
Yeah, the first one. And then some of the other books, I'm like, no,
Yeah, not sure what he meant. That first one I always thought would be, I probably said this to you before, but interesting to have somebody write fan fiction from the perspective of one of the women in the book. Like, but yeah, perhaps that'll happen. No, it's complicated for sure. And especially the bigger you get, the more things people find out about you, and the more ways there are to read your work. And who knows?
Yeah, I'm curious if that, like, I don't know. I also feel like after a certain period of time, like, I don't think about Steinbeck's day to day. I don't know anything about him. You know what I mean? Like, really. I'm curious if that does change things. Like, obviously, like the Cormac McCarthy thing, the fact that like he had a mistress who was a young child, that just came out 2 years ago, or maybe last year or something like that. And then you're like, oh, they met exactly like, oh shoot, what's that movie? No Country for Old Men, basically they met exactly like the scene. And then when you start reading all of his books, you start to realize that there's always a love interest that's like 16 years old. You're like, oh, this is brutal, and not okay. But I'm curious, in like 50 years, like, is there like a microscope on people and then it disappears? And, ethically, is that a good or a bad thing? Obviously, Cormac
Yeah.
McCarthy should not have been, having a relationship with somebody who's 16. Like that's a not okay thing. There's a line there.
It's really ruined the movie Manhattan as well, the Woody Allen movie, where you're
Okay.
like,
Oh,
yeah, if why wouldn't is it that important that she's like 17? Why don't we just like make somebody 19, or like, which is still kind of gross in that situation, but like,
totally.
but yeah, and then you're like, oh, how did we all not see this coming? But
Yes.
anyway,
Hindsight 20.
yeah, I guess we maybe separate the art from the artist, or not. But yeah,
It's hard. Real
it
hard.
is. This has been fantastic, dude. Somebody
Yeah.
suggested that I actually list all of your 5 things at the end of each episode.
You
So, which
should.
I think is a good idea. So
Yeah.
we have number 1 was NPR's recording of the Tallest Man on Earth set at the 2012 Newport Folk Festival. The movie Her, the album White Lighter by Typhoon, the book Some by David Eagleman, and East of Eden by John Steinbeck. It's good. Hey, thanks so much for letting me pick your brain about all these fun things, man.
Yeah. Thank you. This was a blast.
Awesome.